Today, we're diving into a story that's right at the very heart of modern Britain. It's about how immigration, especially after World War II, didn't just add new people to the country. It completely reshaped its identity from the inside out.
And to really get our heads around this, we have to start with a question. How on earth did one single ship, arriving in 1948, end up becoming the symbol for one of the biggest social shifts in the nation's entire history?
So our story begins right in the rubble of World War II. Britain had won the war, sure, but it was exhausted, it was broke, and it was broken. And that set the stage for a really unprecedented invitation. The country had a massive problem on its hands, a critical shortage of workers. So the call went out across the British Empire and the brand new Commonwealth. Come to the mother country. We need you to help rebuild everything from our transport system to our new National Health Service. And this wasn't just some informal shout-out for help, you know? This was written into law. The British Nationality Act of 1948 made it official. If you were a citizen of the UK or its colonies, you were a British citizen, period. And that meant you had the right to come live and work in the UK. The door was wide open. And this timeline really shows you just how fast all of this happened. The war ends in 45. Just 3 years later, boom, the Nationality Act is passed. And in that exact same year, that symbolic ship we were talking about arrives. A really pivotal moment that we're about to get into. So at first, it was all driven by this urgent need for labor. But as more and more people arrived, the whole mood in the country started to shift. It went from this straightforward welcome to a much more complicated and honestly anxious national conversation. And here it is, that ship, the HMT Empire Windrush. Its arrival from the Caribbean became the landmark moment. The people on board, whom we now know as the Windrush generation, weren't just showing up for a job. They were citizens answering a call. The official feeling at the time was really optimistic. It was all rooted in this big idea of the Commonwealth as a family of nations. The people arriving weren't seen as foreigners, not at all. They were seen as members of the extended British family, coming home to help fix up the house. Now, what's so striking about this slide is just how stark the change was. In just 14 years, Britain went from the 1948 Act, which literally said you have the right to settle, to the 1962 Act, which slammed the first major controls on that very same right. That open door was definitely starting to swing shut. So with a population that was now permanently more diverse, the government faced a new question. How do we actually manage this new society? And that led to a really bold and, you could say, controversial policy experiment called multiculturalism. So what even is multiculturalism? Well, at its core, it was a total rejection of the old assimilation idea. You know, the thought that newcomers should just drop their own culture and completely blend in. Instead, this new policy was all about publicly valuing and even supporting the unique cultures of minority groups. The key thing to get here is that this was a deliberate three-step approach. It wasn't an accident. Step 1, reject the old way. Step 2, actively work to preserve the languages, histories, and cultures of these new communities. And step 3, try to make sure everyone, no matter their background, had an equal shot. But of course, a policy this huge doesn't just happen quietly. Oh no. It kicked off one of the most intense, long-running debates in modern British history. And honestly, it's a debate that's still going on today. I mean, for decades now, politicians, academics, people in the pub, everyone has been arguing about it. Was it a success, a total failure? Did it create a better, more vibrant Britain? Or did it maybe weaken the very ties that hold a nation together? On one side of the argument, you had supporters saying, this is brilliant. They argued it made Britain a way more interesting, dynamic, and tolerant country. And they'd point to things like food, music, and art as proof of how this cultural exchange enriched everyone. But then, on the other side, you had critics who were really worried. They felt that by focusing so much on what makes groups different, the policy was chipping away at a shared sense of what it means to be British. The big fear was that you'd end up with a bunch of separate, parallel communities instead of one integrated society. Okay, so let's fast forward. After more than 70 years of this story, where does Britain actually stand today? Well, the effects aren't just something to debate anymore. You can see them written right into the census data of the nation itself. Just look at this number, 19.5%. That's huge. We're talking about nearly 1 in every 5 people in England and Wales identifying as belonging to an ethnic group other than white.
It's the direct demographic legacy of the entire story we've just walked through.
And this chart breaks it all down for us. You can see right away that people with Asian and Black heritage are now the largest minority ethnic groups, a direct line from that Commonwealth migration. You add in the growing number of people who identify as mixed race, and what you're looking at is a Britain that is demographically just unrecognizable from the country it was in 1945. And so, this all leaves us with the big central question. In a country that has been so profoundly and, let's face it, permanently reshaped by immigration,